Back to another episode of the Deductionist Podcast, my lords, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to board. Bilbo's finally on time. Welcome, everyone. I hope you're keeping well. I hope this day finds you awesomely. On today's agenda, it's essentially going to be a look at reframing neurodiversity. Right, the general consensus is the exploration of neurodivergent traits like from ADHD or autism or dyslexia or and as an enhancement of cognitive diversity and how they can be leveraged in tactical, in investigative, in decision critical environments. Right, it's an attempt to challenge any deficit based view and reframe the diversity as a performance enhancer, right? But with that in mind, we've had it's been quite the week. I actually took a day off on Tuesday. It was my birthday, so I did nothing. at least nothing productive anyway, unless you call rest productive. And then it was straight back to work on the Wednesday. But as Sean is, for sure. But this is, I mean, this is a trade-off of the current climate we live in. The diversity angle has been sort of press ganged into a fashion statement of sorts. Oh, that's just my ADHD acting up. Yeah, is it, or are you just being very particular? You know, it is. It has been. Yeah. Well, 28, not quite, but bless you for saying. No, 39. 39. I'm very close to half done. As a morbid sentiment, but there we go. Right. Well, thank you. I will appreciate a birthday wish whenever it comes in, whether it's a couple of days after, a couple of days before, or whenever. I appreciate the well wishes all the same. Right. So let's take a look at a neurodiversity then. Right. It is essentially looking at, well, let's think of it this way. What if the very things you were told made you less than actually made you tactical, right? Thank you. I'm going to put that on screen. That was a random out of context. So I was saying thank you to Bilbo. We live in an age that's obsessed with conformity almost, but the most dangerous thinker is the one who sees things differently, right? So let's define neurodiversity in context, right? And I want to qualify. I am not qualified in any of these areas. I am an omnivorous reader, but that's it. Right, that is it. In terms of my obvious dalliances with diversity myself, outside of having any actual qualification in the area, I don't. Of determining who is neurodivergent and who isn't. Right, I don't have that kind of quality or qualification. I don't have the Liam Neeson skill set. But in this context, it is the concept that neurological differences, i.e., ADHD, autism, and everything else, are on normal variations of the human genome. Right, and so that's from Singer's work in the area. The movement shifts from a medical deficit model to a cognitive diversity one. So tactical thinking requires divergent processing. It requires pattern breaking. It requires hyper specialized perception, all of which are often found in neurodivergent profiles. Um, right? So take something like ADHD, for example, hyperfocus in high stimulation environments pretty much like most security operations, individuals with ADHD would often enter flow states faster. And we look at cognitive flexibility, rapid task switching and improvisation can be superior. If you look at the autistic thinker, there is an advantage to systematic thinking. It's exceptional pattern recognition, anomaly detection from Barron and Cohen in 2009. These ideas, the reduced social conformity bias, it's less likely to be. It's just mean less likely to be swayed by social pressure. So it allows for a purity almost in decision making. I mean, even with dyslexia, there is a stronger connection towards big picture thinking. Strong spatial reasoning and these conceptual visualization tactics. Resilience would naturally come as a byproduct of that. The adaptation through alternative problem solving methods. Due to the various struggles that exists in that particular area, right? So let's take into account the neuroscience properties of perception and attention. The default mode network, it's often less suppressed in ADHD, leading to more associative, creative and divergent thought. Autistic brains often show increased local connectivity and decreased long range connectivity, leading to heightened detail oriented processing. Right? Those differences suggest evolutionarily preserved specialization, not deficits. Right? The neurology of neurodivergence often supports a kind of unique threat detection, sense making, and observational acuity. When you look at it within the realms of profiling and situational awareness, the atypical perception, as in the unexpected insight, those thinkers often catch what others dismiss. Right? So let's take a couple of case studies. For example, you've got Temple Grandin's visual-based systems thinking in animal behavior. You've got real world profiling professionals with autism using object-focused recall and scene scanning at just elite levels. You've got challenges within systems and training. Most tactical training environments, they're designed for neurotypical processing. Think about that kind of tactical environment. If a tactic is going to be effective, can it ever really be typical, given the full divergence of thinkers in that area and the full experience of using tactics for any kind of influential property, whether it be a business meeting, an investigation, or anything else that exists in between? If the tactic strikes the chord of typicalness, I was trying to reach for a better word. If it strikes those particular chords, then it also strikes more of a chance at being able to be recognized, and therefore its overtness has a lack of tactical application to it. It's similar to the thinking of a magician. I say similar, right, because the specific mechanicry is wildly different. But if you look at the presentation of a magic trick, there's the profundity of the, oh my God, how did you achieve the impossible? When the magician knows it's very simple, and it's not like there is a kind of ethereal quality to how the portrayal of the trick is going down. It's just that the magician is used to thinking in a different way, in a way that is not as typical as those who would view magic without the experiential qualities of knowing how to achieve these types of things. And it's the same in this area with the notion of neurodivergence, right? The more often than not, well, more often than not, most of the people that come to me for training have some kind of neurodivergence. So there seems to be this kind of um, support for the base inquisition that goes through um, somebody with a neurodivergent brain to find, looking at it, other pieces of information in the way that they are normally doing, right? Um, it takes a lot to be aware of everything that it is that goes on around you. Of course it does, but it also takes a great source of energy and focus and uh, weight of cognition to be able to reason from all of those things that you see, right? And if you are used to the typical results in that area, then any sort of anomaly or individualized aspect that pops up out of these regular occurrences will be missed by virtue of the accepting of these particular ways of thinking. So training needs to reflect that, right? Most tactical training environments are designed for masses, right? Because the notion of soft skill is that it is difficult to measure. You can measure how accurate somebody is firing a weapon. You can measure how much awareness somebody has of legal precedents and beyond. But how do you measure deployment of tactical efficiency and the rerouting that is necessary in terms of something happening, and the malleability for change, and right? So there are benefits to this. Diversity doesn't mean deficient, and that is the main premise of this, right? The reason why, well, I was about to speak with too much certainty. It is my belief that the reason why all of the um, lone detectives that we know on and that we know and love in this area are definitively neurodivergent in some way, because for those to be seen as the geniuses they are, they have to look at the norm in a different way, right? You look at the misinterpretation of stimming or avoidance, or low eye contact as lack of awareness, right? The stimming for the neurodiverse being self-stimulatory behaviors. There is very often information that's attributed to the erratic nature of fear and what that does to the anxious individual, whereas stimming isn't necessarily in relation to that, or even these myths that are troped out every now and again as low eye contact being lack of awareness or lack of confidence, avoidance, these types of things, right? It is the neurodiverse individual that is more aware of variables, because there is more attention that is paid to the wider context. Not that you have to be neurodiverse to be aware of that, but the diverse properties come with it by default. A neurotypical individual might just need that aspect training into them for the heightened source of awareness, right? And there are trade-offs to be made in that area. If you look at some of the solutions to it that we could make, the easiest one would be to just rewrite training protocols to allow for variation in processing, right? But then we get into the realms of bureaucracy, and the fear of change. Oh, that's just how it was always done. Okay, that doesn't mean that's how we should still do it. Right? You can also use task-based performance metrics over social behavior assessments. Is another great starting point for those who are neurodiverse. The the evolutionary argument that comes on the back of it is neurodivergence is not a malfunction, but a distribution of roles in social ecosystems. You got high risk, high reward cognition. It's a feature of tribes and collective survival systems, right? There's a quote from the research in this area that is, in the wild, it wasn't the loudest who survived, it was the one who noticed what the loudest missed. Right, and there is this theory, and again, cards on the table of the research that I've read. I've only read just a couple of papers in this area, so not that much, but there is a theory that the evolution and longevity of the tribesmen and women of old was down to the more neurodiverse, right? The reactionary properties of hearing a twig crack in the bushes and making a decision on the back of it was more responsive in those who possessed neurodivergent qualities, right? And that this is part of the evolutionary argument. So were we to integrate neurodivergent thinkers into tactical teams, right, the real inclusion is not to accommodate but to optimize. You build out your team structures where varied processing is an advantage, not a liability, right? So if you look at certain high stakes investigations, they would benefit from mixed logic models like the linear thinkers versus the abstract associators. So it's not about asking for seats at the table where the individual doesn't belong. It's more about the redesigning of the table. The future of tactical advantage is neurodiverse because seeing differently is the only way to see what others miss, right? So the encouragement on the back of is to examine the team structures in your own life, and that can be anything from how you think about certain tactical requirements for the completion of job roles in your way of life, whatever it is that you do, whether that's, working in hospitality or in a cubicle or anything else in between. The reevaluation of what a neurodivergent property brings is to be um, supplemented with the typical properties, right? Just because somebody thinks differently doesn't mean the typical way is wrong, right? It is the supplemental elements of bringing all manners of thinking to the way of problem solving in this area, right? You might find that those who are more predisposed to let's call them long bouts of focus are also prone to long bouts of struggle with emotional intelligence, right, and emotional regulation as well, because there is a disconnect from knowing what the mind and the body needs to continue to function highly. Right, so it is just focused on the problem, whereas the plus side of that is a heightened connection with problem solving in general. So it's all about how you're tasking it to be put to use, right? Oh, sorry, Bilbo, missed that. Reminds you of your PI training with groupthink. You need that outside the box view to avoid it and encourage new ideas. 100%, right? Groupthink is harmful cognitive bias. It's one of those things that I mentioned in the TED talk of Paris's filter bubble. When you live in a situation that is constantly confirming your own ideas, your own way of thinking, your own way of being, the yes men fatality that seems to be the downfall of most celebrities because they live in a world where, everyone tells them they're right. To have that in your requirements for investigation is not an accurate depiction of the situations that you need to be involved in. And then, not on the flip side of that, it's not to just encourage disagreements for the sake of disagreement as well, but it is to encourage the variation. One of the challenges I used to set my students years ago was, um, for any situation, whether they are looking at people or objects or locations or anything, is to go through their process, figuring out their hypothesis, fine, and then on the back of it, I want 10 other explanations. Just as a trial, as an exploratory critical thinking aspect to it, right? Because when you push for that many, you'll find the full limit of the pieces of information that you've skipped over a little too quickly, or the pieces of information that you skipped over completely, or that you only chose to focus on these because it contributed to the developing hypothesis. And it is that proverbial Sherlock Holmes quote of, one tends to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts, right? The true theoretical explanation for what it is that you've seen has to take stock of all of the facts and not just some of them, right? And that's a great angle that you can go into for training yourself, entering into these situations. Well, I used to call it the room game. It was an unimaginative title for the game, but it was in the first monographs. Hey, Pascal, the what else game? It was to go into a room that right? Whether that be a room where you live and other people go there, or a place where you work and other people interact, leave, come back, spot what's changed, right? And then you would develop a hypothesis on the back of it, sure. Now, in those circumstances, because you know the information that is connected to that particular location very well, it can very often act as a bias because there are things that you know, but with you not being there, there's also a distinctly large amount of data that you don't know because you weren't there. And that's one of the things that we look to understand as part of the way that we profile in class. It is the difference between things that you believe and things that you know, and getting very clear on the differences between them. There's no judgment about it, but you but yellow hair should hear your sentence about twisting facts to suit theory. Who's yellow hair? I'm gonna need some more information on that, Pascal. I'm drawing a blank. Um, but yeah, so these are the main benefits that you want to look at when it comes to neurodivergent properties, right? Reframing how you connect to it. The divergent angles, if it is that you are a diverse person yourself, neurologically speaking, then it is about understanding what you do and why, right? Ah, yes, yes, good point. Good point, Pascal. Good point. Yeah, there is a definitive need for the entire regime, just to observe a heightened connection towards critical thinking, because there seems to be a distinct lack of it. Um, could be because of what information is being let out to us, the members of the ignorant public. It doesn't look that way, but it could be. But this is what I mean. It takes the diverse angle to count for those changes, because your emotions tell you, well, I feel this way about it because of X, Y, and Z. Whereas that might be completely right. It doesn't account for the possibility of variation. You don't want to be in a situation where you build habits around leaning into your emotive reasoning because it's based in irrationality. Hey, and Cyrus, with don't worry about being late. The fact that you're here at all is to be celebrated. So thank you for tuning in and stopping by. Yes, we do our live versions of the podcast uh, every 2 weeks on a Thursday, and then the edited prettied version will go out tomorrow on the Friday after the live's been done. Right? Um, but yeah, this is the other connected benefit of a neurodiverse thinker is the neurodiverse thinker is more at peace with the possibility of being wrong because of less connection towards social pressure and emotive pressure, right? If you are wrong, fair enough. Then you move on, right? We encourage the reframe in class to not not really acknowledge being wrong as anything negative. It's more like you'll be onto something or you'll learn something else. That's the best way of putting it, right? All you're doing is you're following information and validating, dismissing, and clarifying based on what it suggests, what it communicates to you. It is predominantly without ego, without judgment, right? Because it is just a summation of observable truisms. That's it. And the neurodiverse thinker is more at home with that. Not that the neurotypical person can't be, just that the neurodiverse thinker is more at home with that because there is less connection towards the social pressure angle or the emotive pressure of wanting to be right. There is an egoic release with being right. Everyone gets it. When I've made some kind of fanciful inductive observation that's turned out to be true, you get that. Oh, that was a delicious dopamine. Lovely, thank you. Um, right then, that's just the moments that we learn from, but that reaction can harm how you think. Every situation that you end up in is a brand new version of it. Everyone, right? If even though I'm in this same chair, at the same kind of time. Usually it's about 7:30, yeah, UK time in Cyrus, by the way. I missed that. Where was the G word? Where was that? Oh, I guess. Ugh. Yeah, we don't like guess. We don't like guess. Um, let's have a look. Being wrong is a lesson. It's almost a reward. You learn something new. Being right is just a dopamine hit. Exactly. I'm always excited to be wrong. 100%. 100%. There is. I mean, look at it. Look at it this way. If you were in a situation where you really were always right, what a boring world that would be. Right? Think about it that way. It's a little bit reductio ad absurdum, but if you were in a world where you really were always right about your observations, there would be nothing to learn. There would be very little to motivate. There would be very little to require your attentive capacity to such a degree because you're always going to be right. Right? That requirement for continual analysis. It's another thing that I picked up from The Shallows, a book by Nicholas Carr was living in the dangers of living in continuous partial attention. So it's that always consuming but never analyzing. Yeah, just because we doom scroll 30 headlines on a particular news topic does not mean you're well informed. It just means that you've sacrificed depth over breadth when you look at the prospects of Paulian critical thinking. It's one of, well, two of the 9 standards of thought when it comes to applying this um, towards problem solving. Like, for example, even though I have systems for understanding the movements of the body in terms of importance, doesn't rank very highly, right? There's much more to contribute to a true objective, fully observed understanding of an individual, group, situation, or whatever it is than merely a body language movement. There's much more that goes into it, right? And it is the neurodiverse element that will keep you aware of the lesser tread variables. No need for the apologies, then, Cyrus. You do induce it. That's correct. You do. Um, yes, yes, that is. It's yeah. You're right on the time. Let's have a look. Pascal says being right all the time can be annoying because you become overconfident, never question yourself, and it's questioning yourself that gets you through life. 100%. There is. Oh, Pascal, let yourself down. Terrible behavior. Oh mon Dieu. So all that is to share a little insight into the realm of the neurodiverse thinker, as it is my inductively reasoned observation that most of my regular audience falls into that category. At least most of my extended family does as well. So even if nothing else, the information for reframing how the neurodiverse connects to a particular situation, that cannot be understated, and that's only for my two pennies. That's all, right? What the two pennies of just an obsessive dork means, that's up to you guys. But what you can take from that is the aspect of reframing anything inherently negative about your connection to the Sherlockian skill set, like what you can do or what you can't do or what you struggle with, and you're always, just as it's boring to be always wrong, there might be some of you that would focus on to try that again. I've given that away. Just as it's boring to be always right, it's just as important to accentuate the moments where you feel you are always wrong. Both moments serve as opportunities for reflection, and the more you lean into variations of tackling them, the more solutions will present themselves. Like one of the things that we do in our community, that we have, the omniscient community focused on memory and logic, um, all of which will be in the description box below when this goes out tomorrow, is I set little riddle challenges when each new course comes out. And there's one that was, I forget the exact date, but it's easily a couple of weeks old now. Um, to really let the problem fester, and nobody's got to the solution yet. Nobody's got to the solution, but everyone is using the exact thinking patterns that we're talking about here. The variations is the key. And in the exploration of the variations, the solution will be presented. All right. So, yeah, with that in mind, guys, that's our little look at neurodiversity in tactical thinking applications for the day, whether that be investigations or any particular project that you have to work on where you work, is par for the course. It's up to you how you apply it. It doesn't mean that it can only be applied in investigations. It doesn't mean that it can only be applied in a criminal setting. It just means that it needs reframing to be applied correctly. Let's have a look. Do you think it's a propensity to hyperfocus that might lead to neurodiverse people to love deduction so much? It's entirely a possibility. It's entirely a possibility, because I know those, because obviously with training for me for a while, you get to talking, and I know there are those who find, particularly when it comes to the challenging problems, outlets for how they think. It's like being given a task specifically for that thinking pattern, so that the little voice inside kind of goes, uh, but there are also just as many who come to it from an affinity of, the lone genius detective. There is this guy or girl that reminds them of them, and then to go and understand a little bit more about the actuality of their thinking, and the theoretical stuff behind it, but the reality based things behind it as well. It's been a way to ground a lot of people and help them deal with rational connections towards the rest of the world. Um, for Pascal, for Pascal, it's because it's a puzzle that doesn't involve emotion. Yeah. Oh, let me show you the one Maddie got me for my birthday. So I mean, I've been doing Rubik's Cubes for years anyway, but this is a Braille one specifically made for the blind. I don't know if you can see the, will it focus? Yeah, so there's 9 lumps on the yellow, little circles on the green. The white is flat. The orange has a cross on it, and the red has squares on it. Now, I mean, you can definitely solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded anyway. You don't need a Braille one. But there is a change for the puzzle when, because usually when you solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded, you have to mix it up and then memorize it in order to go in. This one, you start blind and you get given the puzzle already mixed, so you have no idea where anything is. You just have to feel it out, and it's an entirely different cognitive journey. At least it was for me. Anyway, I really enjoy it. But again, much like Pascal, I and you as well, Bilbo. I too love a puzzle, right? And that's why I find humans both frustrating and intriguing in equal measure. Intriguing for the puzzles, but frustrated because I'm not really a fan of, of the human race en masse. All things considered, I'd rather hang out with my dogs. Um, I can do it blind. I can. Takes a lot longer, but I can do it blind. So there we go, folks. With that in mind, I'm going to bring this to a close. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts from, and drop a comment of your main takeaway from this particular episode. If indeed you've only got one, then I'd like to hear it. But for my neurodiverse friends, they'll likely be 3 or 4. So with that in mind, guys, I'm going to see you again soon. All right, take it easy.